Good morning, children. Welcome to our social science class. And today we will be revising the previous chapter, that is chapter 4, the Delhi Sultanate, from the subject history. And in the previous turn, we had revised about the slave dynasty and the Khilji dynasty. Now, today we will be revising about the Tughlaq dynasty. Third dynasty, Tughlaq dynasty, which was from AD 1320 to AD 1414. And I'll be sharing the screen. And children, all of y'all, please follow up the chapter. So here we are with the case study, Tughlaq dynasty, AD 1320 to AD 1414. Now, Ghayasuddin Tughlaq, we are reading about. So, as we go further, Ghazi Malik put an end to Khilji dynasty. Who put an end to Khilji dynasty? Ghazi Malik. And he took the title of Ghayasuddin Tughlaq Shah and ascended the throne in AD 1320. He conducted campaigns against Warangal, Odisha, and Bengal to expand his kingdom. He died in AD 1325 when a pavilion built for a public reception in his honor collapsed. Then what happened further? Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Who came the next Sultan? Muhammad bin Tughlaq. AD 1325 to AD 1351. Muhammad bin Tughlaq was a great scholar and the only sultan to have received good education. He has often been described as a mixture of opposite. Mixture of opposite means he had two types of qualities, we can't say. He had two types, two sides. Means sometimes he was very kind and as well as sometimes he was very cruel. Means he had some good points also and he had some bad points also. So that's why he is known as mixture of opposites. So he was very wise, yet at times he behaved unwisely. That resulted in great misery to the people. Followed, children? So that is why he is known as mixture of opposite, because sometimes he used to get very angry, very cruel, and sometimes he used to be very kind. Now, here we can see through some examples about his nature, about his kindness and about his cruelty, and also he was sometimes unwise, which resulted in great misery to the people. So the first example is taxation of Doab. Taxation in Doab. What is Doab? The territory between the Ganga and the Yamuna is considered very fertile and is known as Doab. Okay, children. So Doab means the territory between Ganga and the Yamuna, which is considered very fertile. In order to increase revenues, Muhammad bin Tughlaq increased the rate of tax and ordered his officials to realize the tax strictly. That means he ordered his officers, officials to collect the tax, to take the tax very strictly. This was done at a time when there occurred a famine in Doab. So that was the time when there was a famine occurred, and due to famine, because of failure of rain, what happened? Failure in Doab, famine in Doab it was, due to failure of rain. So because of this, what were the consequences? The consequences were hundreds of people fled to jungles because of torture and misery. The land became barren. All people left that area because famine occurred, no rainfall was there, so no crops and no food. So there was shortage of food during famine. So hundreds of people fled to the jungles because of torture and misery also. The land became barren means empty, and he later provided liberal relief, but then it was too late. Followed children. So that land had become barren means land had become infertile or unproductive. Understood children? Now, the second example is transfer of capital. What did he do next? First was he imposed tax, and then second is he transferred his capital from Delhi to Devagiri. Why? What was the reason? Because Devagiri was situated in the middle of his kingdom. So what did he do? He ordered all his nobles, officials, learned men, and many others to shift to the new capital, which was renamed Daulatabad. Okay, children. Now, in spite of many arrangements, the distance of 1500 kilometers was too long for people to bear the hardships of the journey. So children, you can see here in this map, here is the map. You see, here is Devagiri. Okay, children. And here is Delhi. This is Delhi and this is Devagiri. So from Delhi to Devagiri, all people had to come here. And this distance was how much? Just now I told you all 1500 kilometers. So it was too long for the people to bear the hardships of the journey. And as soon as the Sultan realized that the scheme had failed, he ordered the people to return to Delhi. Means what happens? Some people started moving. He ordered people to move from Delhi to Devagiri. And then when he saw that people are finding difficult to migrate from Delhi to Devagiri. So what did he do? He again gave a second order, people to return to Delhi. So what happened? This brought more misery to people. So people were very unhappy. They were not satisfied. They were in miserable condition. They didn't have food to eat. And overall, they were not satisfied. Okay, children. So here you have seen in this map, empire of Muhammad bin Tughlaq and how he transferred his capital from Delhi to Devagiri, and distance was 1500 kilometers, and which was a failure. Now, the third example is token currency. Another blunder he made. What did he do? Muhammad bin Tughlaq had lost a great deal of his wealth due to bad decisions. He decided to introduce token currency in brass and copper in place of gold and silver. What did he do? Actually, that time the currency was in gold and silver. And what did he do? He introduced brass and copper. So what happened? When he introduced brass and copper currency, so what order he issued? His order was that the people should use and accept these coins just like gold and silver coins. These coins means the brass and copper coins, they should use just like gold and silver coins. This experiment also failed. Why? Because gold and silver coins disappeared from the market. Gold was very precious. You know, gold is very precious, very valuable, very costly. So people knew the value of gold and silver, and all the gold and silver coins disappeared from the market, and forged coins manufactured by people at their homes came into circulation. Thus, trade and business came to a standstill. Means it was halted. It was came to a full stop, we can say. And the treasury became empty and the prestige of the empire suffered. Means he had no money in his treasury, and we can say that he had become bankrupt. Okay. Now the next example is plans of conquest. He was very ambitious for what? He was making preparation. He wanted to conquer Persia, Iran, and China. And he was preparing for about a year. He went on making preparations, planning how to conquest. And ultimately, he had to give up this project. This put a heavy strain on the royal treasury. Muhammad bin Tughlaq's personal life was marked by a high standard of morality. He was a great scholar, loved fine arts and music, but as a ruler, he failed. Okay, children. So, Muhammad bin Tughlaq, as a ruler, he failed. He lacked practical wisdom. He inherited a vast kingdom, but at the time of his death, it was considerably reduced in size. So, when he died, that time he had a very small kingdom. It had been reduced in size. It was not a vast kingdom. His weakness resulted in repeated revolts in many parts of the kingdom. So we have completed the description about Muhammad bin Tughlaq, and now we come to the next ruler, next sultan of Tughlaq dynasty, that was Firoz Shah Tughlaq. Okay, so Muhammad bin Tughlaq died in AD 1351. According to Badayuni, the Sultan was freed of his people and they of him. He was succeeded by his cousin Firoz Shah Tughlaq. Okay, children. And Firoz Shah Tughlaq faced a difficult situation. The empire was shrinking, and the army, the nobles, and the ulemas all wished to have a greater say in the administration of the empire. So he, though a distinguished military leader, lacked courage and conviction. Means though he was a ruler, he was a leader, he was a sultan, but he was lacking courage, and he didn't want to be guilty for anything. Means he was lacking conviction also. He failed in his two expeditions against Bengal, which he lost forever. He also made no efforts to reconquer Deccan. Thus, Firoz Shah Tughlaq reign was a reign of peace. Understood, children? His rule was a period of peace, and the welfare of the people became his primary interest. So he did a lot for the welfare of the people. What work he did for the people? He did a lot of work in the following ways. The first welfare work was done by him, that is, he took efforts to improve cultivation. He reclaimed wasteland and brought it under farming. He repaired old canals and dug new ones. Second welfare work, he reduced the taxes. And the next welfare work was done by him was, he was a great builder and built towns, schools, which were known madrasas that time, mosques and hospitals. He built a new capital at Delhi and named it Firozabad. Okay, children. So Firoz Shah Tughlaq proclaimed himself a true Muslim king. Unfortunately, he was intolerant towards other religions. He could not tolerate even the Shias. He imposed jizya tax on the non-Muslims. He thus set his Hindu subjects against him. Okay, children. So now you have learned that Muhammad bin Tughlaq was there. After Muhammad bin Tughlaq, who was the Sultan? Firoz Shah Tughlaq. Now after Firoz Shah Tughlaq, who was there? His successors? Firoz Shah Tughlaq successors were incompetent, means they were not able to manage the kingdom. They were inefficient sultans. After his death in AD 1388, his descendants rose against each other. The empire started disintegrating. And disintegrating means all the boundaries were becoming smaller and smaller. Kingdoms were becoming smaller and smaller. Only Punjab and Delhi remained under the control of the Tughlaqs. Followed, children. Then what happened next? Invasion of Tamerlane. So meanwhile, Temur the Lame, better known as Tamerlane, had risen the power in Central Asia. Okay, children. And in AD 1398, Tamerlane attacked Delhi and did not face much resistance. Like other Mongol invaders, he started looting and terrorizing people. When they resisted, he ordered their massacre. Massacre means deliberately killing people brutally. So started killing people. He ordered to kill people brutally. And this terror lasted for about a fortnight. A fortnight means for 15 days. He then left Delhi and on his way back, he looted Meerut, Haridwar, Nagarkot and Jammu. Besides the wealth, he took a large number of artisans. Artisans are all skilled workers making things by hand. Craftsmen are more skilled, highly skilled people, and builders to Samarkand. So what did he do? He took all the artisans and craftsmen and builder to Samarkand. So this is the, here we have learnt about the Tughlaq dynasty, and after Tughlaq dynasty, we are approaching to Sayyid dynasty. Now, Timur entrusted the governance of Multan, Lahore, and Dipalpur to his deputy Khizr Khan. Followed, children. What did Timur do? He entrusted the governance of Multan, Lahore, and Dipalpur to his deputy Khizr Khan. And Timur died in AD 1405. Then what happened? The Tughlaq kingdom somehow managed to continue till AD 1413. Khizr Khan occupied Delhi in 1414 and he laid the foundation of the Sayyid dynasty. Followed, children. So, who was the founder of Sayyid dynasty? Khizr Khan. He was the most able ruler of Sayyid dynasty and he died in AD 1421. His successors were all very weak. So now that this is how we have completed the fourth dynasty, Sayyid dynasty. And now we will be revising about the fifth dynasty, that is Lodi dynasty. Okay, children. Lodi dynasty from AD 1451 to 1526. During the rule of Sayyids, one of their Afghan officers, Bahlol Lodi, rose to great prominence and became the governor of Punjab. In AD 1451, he seized Delhi and raised himself to the throne. He recovered Sindh and Mewar. He treated the nobles as his equals. He tried to win their confidence by giving them gifts and land grants as jagirs. With their help, he ruled for about 38 years. How many years? 38 years. Now, we will revise about the next Sultan of Lodi dynasty, that is Sikandar Lodi. Sikandar Lodi ruled from AD 1489 to AD 1517. He succeeded Bahlol Lodi. He suppressed rebellious chiefs. He was the greatest of the Lodi kings. He moved the capital from Delhi to Agra so that he could control the kingdom better. And he is also known for his hatred towards the Hindus. The next Sultan is Ibrahim Lodi, ruled from AD 1517 to AD 1526. Ibrahim Lodi failed to keep the nobles in good humor. Lodi kings were Afghans. Much of their strength depends on the loyalty of the Afghan nobles. And these nobles became jealous of his power and success. A powerful Afghan noble, Daulat Khan Lodi, invited Babur to invade India in AD 1526. Okay, so in AD 1526, Babur, a descendant of Timur, established the Mughal Empire in India. So Ibrahim Lodi was the last Sultan of Lodi dynasty. Okay, he was the last Sultan of Lodi dynasty. And then what happens? A powerful Afghan noble, Daulat Khan Lodi, invited Babur to invade India in AD 1526. Babur, descendant of Timur, established the Mughal Empire. So here, after the Slave dynasty, Khilji dynasty, Tughlaq dynasty, Sayyid dynasty, and Lodi dynasty was established the Mughal Empire by Babur in AD 1526. Now we will revise in detail about the administration under the Delhi Sultanate. The Muslim state was a theocracy. Theocracy means a system of government in which the priests rule in the name of God. So the Sultan was ruling in the name of God and Islam was the religion of the state. Now, how was the administration possible during that time? So it is in different points. Like first we will revise about the central administration. So they had central administration and it was, the first point is that the Sultan and the high officials were holding the topmost position. Sultan was the Sultan and high officials were there who were managing the administration. How did they manage? The Sultan was at the head of both civil and military administration. He carried on the administration with the help of a number of ministers. The most important of these was the Wazir or the chief ministers. Other key officials were the Diwan, that was finance minister, and the Qazi, that is chief judge. Okay, so the finance minister was known as Diwan and the Qazi was known as chief judge. Then the administration was possible. The first point, the Sultan and the high officials, and the second order was the army they had. The standing army was directly under the control of the Sultan. Besides the standing army, iqtadars were also required to supply the forces through provincial governors. And the army minister was known as Diwan-e-Ariz. Diwan-e-Ariz. Then next step was justice. In cases involving Muslims, justice was based on Shariat or the Islamic law. It was usually administered by the Qazi or judge. Now we have the next topic, provincial administration. First was the central administration and second they also had provincial administration. Now how was this managed? The empire was divided into a number of provinces. Some of the provinces were administered by governors called Naib Sultan. Some other provinces were administered by the defeated rulers who had been allowed to rule on payment of regular tribute. They were also required to assist the Sultan in times of war. That's how they managed the provincial administration. And now comes the third part, local administration. The provinces were divided into shiks, each under a shikdar. Each shik was divided into number of parganas, which were like the modern day districts. Okay, children. And the village was the smallest unit of administration. Each village had a revenue officer called Patwari. It had its own panchayat to settle disputes. So you understood, children? Central government they had, provincial government they had, and they also had local administration at the village level also. Now comes the next topic, that is economic conditions. What were the economic conditions during that time, during the Delhi Sultanate period? Agriculture was the most important economic activity. It was the source of income of the Sultanate. Indians produced many crops such as rice, sugarcane, oilseeds, and cotton. Firoz Shah Tughlaq built many canals also. Our people were masters of many crafts that time, such as weaving of woolen and silk clothes, jewelry making, metal work, and stone work. Delhi, Jaunpur, Lucknow, and Cambay were well-known industrial centers during the medieval age. And third economic condition was India had commercial relations with countries of Central and West Asia, East Africa, and China. Bengal was the chief port for trade with China and East Indies. That means India had trade relations, commercial relations with Central and West Asia, East Africa and China, and Bengal, we had the chief port for trading with China and East Indies. So these were the economic conditions prevailing that time. Now we have the next topic, that is the fifth condition, the nobles and the Ikta system. What was the Ikta system that time and the nobles were supposed to do? So first we will read about the nobles and the Ikta system, and after that completing the chapter, we will read about the circle of justice. Okay, children. So the noble and Ikta system. The nobles were a powerful force in the Sultanate period. Most of the nobles were Turkish or Afghans in origin. Most of the provincial governors, military commanders, and high-ranking officials in the government came from this class. Instead of paying salary to an officer in cash, he was granted a certain revenue arising from a piece of land or village reserved for the purpose. Okay, children. And the land grants were known as iktas, and their holders were called iktadars or muktis. This was known as the ikta system. Under this system, what was this system? The system was, out of the revenue that the officer collected, he used to keep a certain amount as his salary and another sum for maintaining the soldiers for the sultan. In some cases, a part of the revenue was sent to the sultan. The muktis maintained law and order in their iktas. They were also required to supply soldiers to sultan in times of war. Okay, children. Now, control over muktis. How did they control over muktis? The muktis were expected to keep a detailed account of income and expenditure concerning their iktas. Rulers like Balban, Alauddin Khilji, and Sikandar Lodi, these were the three rulers who could keep their nobles under proper control. But most of the sultans failed to bring the nobles under proper discipline. Means most of them were not able to control their nobles and they were not able to keep them in a disciplined manner. Control over muktis was easier if the land grants were not hereditary. But when a title passed on from father to his son, it became difficult to manage the muktis. Okay, children. Now we have the next topic, that is Ibn Battuta. So now we will revise about the traveler from Morocco, Ibn Battuta's observations. He was a traveler. He came from Morocco and he stayed here and he wrote everything, you can say something, some important points during of those time, and that is known as traveler's account of Ibn Battuta. So Ibn Battuta, a traveler from Morocco, Africa, reached India in AD 1333. He spent many years at the court of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. He has left an interesting account of India of this time. It is clear from Ibn Battuta's account that Muhammad bin Tughlaq had contradictory qualities, as we have already revised, that sometimes he used to be kind and sometimes he used to be very cruel. Same thing here, Ibn Battuta has mentioned that sometimes he was very humble, but at other times he would inflict severe punishment for even ordinary offenses. Then further he describes about, according to Ibn Battuta, the country was in a state of disorder and traveling from one place to another was unsafe. Okay, children. He says some chieftains live in thick bamboo forests. The bamboos protect the rulers as if they are living in a fort. So, according to him, some chieftains were there. They used to live in thick bamboo forests, and bamboo trees were like a safety wall for them. They were living like as though they are living in a fort. Inside the strong bamboo walls are their cattle and their crops. They used to keep their cattle and crops also there. The rains last 3 or 4 months in a year in these regions. So therefore, there is also sufficient water for them within. This is what he wrote in his account. So these rulers could not be conquered easily. He also gave an account that these rulers could not be conquered easily. For this, a strong army was needed, which would cut down the bamboo forest using some very sharp tools. Okay, children. So this was the account of Ibn Battuta, who was a traveler from Morocco, Africa, regarding the Delhi Sultanate period. Now we will revise about the circle of justice. What was the circle of justice that time? Fakhr-e-Mudabbir, a 13th century writer, wrote that rulers and military commanders should promote the interest of the peasants. So here, circle of justice. Okay, children, we are reading about the circle of justice, and circle of justice means what? It means that rulers and military commanders should promote the interest of the peasants, means they should work for the welfare of the people. And why should they? Why should they do this? Why should they promote the interest of people? This is because a successful ruler should have a large army to support him. And the soldiers cannot live comfortably without a good salary. So in order to pay them a good salary, the rulers need revenues, they need taxes, they need money. So the revenues came from the peasants. The revenue mainly came from the farmers. But the peasants can pay revenue only when there is peace and prosperity in the kingdom. So when peace and prosperity is prevailing, only then the farmers or peasants will be happy and they will be paying their regular revenues. The rulers should therefore ensure justice for the peasants. So they have to be fair and they have to ensure justice for the farmers. So this is all about the circle of justice. So children, we have completed this chapter, the Delhi Sultanates, and also about the administrative system we have revised about. And finally, we have learned the central administration, about provincial administration, local administration, economic conditions, and the nobles and Iqta system, and Ibn Battuta's observations. So finally, here, when we read about the end of the Delhi Sultanate, then a powerful Afghan noble, Daulat Khan, invited Babur to invade India, and in AD 1526, Babur, a descendant of Timur, established the Mughal Empire. So children, here we have revised the whole chapter, all the dynasties, and you know the sources of information, inscriptions, and the chronicles and travelers' account, and finally it lasted from AD 1206 to AD 1526. As I told you just now, that a powerful Afghan noble, Daulat Khan Lodi, invited Babur to invade India, and in this year, which is mentioned here, AD 1526. What happened? Babur, a descendant of Timur, established the Mughal Empire in India. So children, thank you for watching. This is all for today. We have completed the chapter, the Delhi Sultanate, and your duty is to revise the chapter. See you in the next turn. Till then, take care, stay safe, and have a nice day ahead.